computer.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Art 192, Photoshop/digital imaging for the fall semester 2021. Today, what I want to do is to cover preparing Photoshop images for the web. In addition to the web, you may want to use them to send to somebody by way of email or compress them in some way so that they don't take up quite so much space. But especially if you're working with files and preparing them for your web page, it requires a different attention, different process. So first things first, let's go ahead and look at a new file in Photoshop, creating a new one. And if you go to new files, if I close this here, you'll see I already have a file. I'm going to use this file and save it for the web. But what I want to do first is if you go to new file, it will give you options that, these are recent files, saved files, photographs, print, art and illustration. The tab that we're interested in is for the web. Now, the default sizes that they have here, which is the most common these days, is 1366 by 768 pixels at 72 pixels per inch. That's the first thing that you should pay close attention to, is that measurement for the web is number one in pixels. And number two, since we've been working for print in this class, which generally is 300 pixels per inch, you only need screen resolution for the web, and that's 72 pixels per inch. So that by itself will make for a very small file compared to what you've been using for print. Then we have other standard formats. One is 1920 by 1080, which is for a large screen. Then we have medium screens, and the minimum size is 1024 by 768. Again, at 72 pixels per inch. I would also leave it as a work with horizontal formats. You can work with vertical or square formats, but if you're thinking in terms of filling the entire screen for your splash page or something, then those are the horizontal formats. When you work in print, not always, but typically you're working with a vertical format, like for posters, for one sheets, whatever. But books would be a separate issue if you were working with a double truck, spread, or if the book happens to be a horizontal format. But more often than not, you're working with a vertical orientation. For the web, again, if it spans the entire page, it will be a horizontal format. That's what we're working with. So I'm going to select large format, and I'm going to leave it white background, and I'll click create. Okay, so this is the format that we would normally use. Now, if I wanted it as a splash page for my website. Now, if I wanted it any other size, I could always resize it, depending on what kind of website you're building. If you've instructed it with a responsive coding to make sure that, or class to make sure that it resizes appropriately, that's a separate issue. But what I want to do now is take and say, what if I wanted to use this image for my website? I have no idea how big it is. It's measured in inches. I don't know the resolution. I do, but for our demonstration purposes, I'll say that I don't. And what you always need to do is just simply go to image size, as we've done for print as well. And you'll notice that because this was rendered on the computer, it starts off at 72 pixels per inch, but look at the size of it. It's 35 inches by 20 inches in height. Now, if I switch that to pixels, okay, that far exceeds what we have or what we need for a large screen. So I'm going to have to crop it in some way. To make sure that it fits the desired format, I'm going to just click OK and just leave it alone. And because I've already made some modifications to this, one of the things that I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select all of these layers. And we may have done this before, and watching the Retouch Restore photographs, he's also done this as well, is that he did it a little bit differently. But what I'm going to show you is that to make sure that all of the adjustment layers that I've created are applied to this image, I'm going to go ahead and select the layers that I want. And I'm going to hit Shift, Option, Command E. What that does is that it keeps all of these original images intact, but it creates a flattened version of it at the very top. So this is the one that I'm going to use for the web. Now, to easily make sure that it fits and I crop it accordingly to the other one, what I can do is I can use the Move To tool. The new full file that I created is click and drag up like so, and then hold down the Shift key and then release. Now, it's pretty close. It's a pretty close fit. But if I hit Command T to resize, make sure that I resize this. I don't want to capture. So let's go back out of there. Let's cancel that. When I hit again, let's try this again. Let me zoom out a little bit. Command T for transform. No, what am I doing here? I don't want to capture this. Do I might have something else going on here that I don't want. Let's select the layer. And with this layer selected, I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit, Transform, Command T. Maybe I'm probably selecting the wrong key by mistake. So you can see that I have a little bit of leeway here. So I'm going to go ahead and to make sure that it's centered from the center and resized and that the image is constrained, I'm going to hold down the Shift and the Option key and click and drag. Okay. So there's a little bit of leeway to the left and to the right. And I want to make sure that I don't have any left or right background, overlapped, but I'll give it a little bit of a nudge to make sure that I have it. And I click the return key and I'm set to go. So now the next step is to save it for the web. I need to know, number one, where I have saved this, and I should save it first as a Photoshop file, because if I plan on adding any additional adjustment layers, then I should do that as a Photoshop file. But then what we need to do is we need to save it in the proper file format for the web. And I will talk about that in a minute, but I'm going to use the default of a JPEG. We can save it as multiple file formats, and we could do that as well. So before I save it in the proper file format, let me go ahead and create another brand new file here. Okay, and I'm just going to make this large web. And it doesn't have to be, it can be anything at the moment. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see something here. And what I want to do is I want to talk about file formats. And then I'm going to talk about the resolution, which I just mentioned a moment ago, 72 pixels per inch. But it's important to note that you can't use a Photoshop file for the web. Okay, that will not work. So we need to export it as either a JPEG, GIF, or PNG. So let me show you what each of those does. So let me write those down for you. So I'm going to go ahead and use a text tool. And hopefully this doesn't crash on me. One. I thought I had gotten everything all squared away. And this is, there we go. Okay. So I just want to use Helvetica here. I don't know why I have something else. Let's put in the top here. You know what? I'm going to pause for just a second. Pause the recording. Okay, so I'm re-recording this. So what I want to do is just label this file formats for the web. And let's make it flush left. I don't know what I was doing before all of this, but somehow all of this has changed. So here are the file formats. So we have it flush left. It doesn't have to be any of that, but I'm just going to work it on the fly here. I'm going to go ahead and hit the return key and option 8 for bullet. And so you can use JPEG. So that would be .jpg. I don't want that capitalized. And I think what I have set here, I don't know what I was doing before. Damn. Let's go ahead and view all of the options here. I don't want capture. Turn that off. I don't know what I was doing. So that's JPG or .jpeg. Okay. You could also use a GIF. So that would be .gif or ping. So .png. Okay. Now, the next thing that you want to do, those are the only file formats that you can use for the web. The next thing is, as I mentioned, is the resolution. Is 72 pixels per inch, 72 ppi. Okay. And then the last thing that I should mention is that when you're saving for the web, what I can't spell either, resolution. There we go, resolution. File formats, or say, I'll just say saving for the web. For the web. Best laid plans, what can I say? Then I said the last thing that you need to concern yourself with is how your file is named. So let's look at that. I'll just say my first web page. And if that were going to be named .jpeg, or let's just use that as a default, that would not work. Okay. Number one, you cannot start the file name with a capital letter, and nor should you ever put spaces between words. It just won't work on the web. So to name this properly, it can be done a couple of different ways. I can start by putting this with a lowercase, lowercase m, and then I have a choice. I can either use an underscore between the words, or I can close up the space and I can leave the capital letters in the middle of the word or of the name of the page, the file. And so what that does is that is called camel casing. And if I wanted to, I could get rid of this as well. And this is how I typically prefer to name my pages. Now, again, you have a choice between JPEG, GIF, or PNG. So what would be the difference between them? Let's go back to the file that I just created here. Okay, and this, we're going to decide on which of these that we want to use. So the first thing that you need to do, under what circumstances do you use a JPEG? What circumstances do you use a GIF? And what circumstances do you use a PNG? They each have their strengths. PNG is one of the newest file formats. GIF is the oldest, and JPEG is still probably one of the most commonly used. So what we can do, if this is the size that I want the file, then the first thing that I want to do is I want to save this as a Photoshop file format, because this I will consider as my original. So I'm going to go ahead and select Save As. And let's go ahead and I'm going to save it on my computer. Everything is just peachy keen and sluggish right now. And I don't know why. So it has nothing to do with we'll say save for web demo. So I've created a new folder for this file, and I'll just call it that. I'll call it save for web PSD. And I'm very careful about how I name it, because when I save it for the other file formats, it will automatically, depending on how I save them, it will save them using the correct system that I described just a moment ago. Remember, not starting the name of the file with a capital letter, not using spaces between the words, or if I do use spaces, you have to use an underscore. So I'll go ahead and I'll save this first, like so. And then the next thing that I need to do is that I can do it a variety of different ways. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to save this one. Let's go ahead and make copies of each of these. So I'm going to go ahead and select the layer and hit Command J, hit Command J again, and one more time, just for a good measure. So I have my original down here. So I'm going to name this one, this layer original. Just to, in case I want to make any changes to it later. You don't have to do this. And then this one, I'm going to name is the JPEG. Come on. There we go. So this one is going to be, what do I want this to be? I want this to be save for web .jpg. So this will be my JPEG. Okay. This one is going to be the GIF. So this is going to be save for web .gif. And then the next one is going to be the PNG. Okay, so this is going to be, actually, I'm going to get rid of this file for the moment, and you'll see why, this layer. Okay, so if I only want to save this as a JPEG, then I just need this layer, and that's it. If I want to save it in 3 different formats at the same time, I can also do that. So when in effect, would I use a JPEG? Well, what if I wanted to create transparency? GIF is one of the 2 file formats that allows transparency, and that can be, but it's either 100%, it's totally opaque or totally transparent. So for example, if I were to come over here and let's use the elliptical marquee tool. And if I were to come over here, and let's say I just wanted to save part of this. I wanted part of this to be in my file. And I just want this to be the part that's visible, and the rest of it, I want it to be opaque. I want to be hidden. So I'm going to turn this one into a layer mask. Okay. So let's go ahead and turn that off, the ones beneath it. And you can see that I goofed because it's, well, if I want to leave it soft, I can, but I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to go back here, and where the feather, we had feather, I'm going to select 0 pixels as feather. Okay, and let's do that again. Let's go ahead and create the layer mask. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. Why is it doing that? Let's undo that again. I don't want any of that. Let's go to properties. And why is it selecting feather? So let me deselect, because I probably already made it, and that's the problem with it. Let me go ahead and go again and hit Option to click in between here. And let's move this around a little bit. I want to try to capture the mother and son and then the artwork in the back. So that should do it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and try again. And there we go. I have a nice hard edge. If you want a soft edge, you can. But again, all of this is transparent. The rest of this is opaque. Let me turn off the background here so we can see what this looks like. Okay. And let me do that again. Let's go ahead and select all of that. So I'm going to go back again. I'm going to select this to make sure that the background is in fact transparent. So I'm going to hold down the Command key, click the selection. I'm going to go up to select and select inverse. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the delete key. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and make sure that that goes away. Why isn't that going away? It isn't. Well, let's see. I'll do that. Well, this would be for the GIF, say for web GIF. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this. Now, I thought I threw this one away. I guess I didn't. And I'll go ahead and I'll copy this layer, Command D or Command J to copy this. Okay, let's turn this layer off. And now if I want partial opacity, I can adjust the layer itself. Now, why isn't that working here? Let me go back again. I'm going to go back again and just throw this layer away. Let's take this one, turn it back on. I'm going to throw this away. Let's go ahead and apply it. Okay. And that's not working. So let's try again. Oh boy, not having such good luck here, huh? And I don't know why that is. Command J. Let's go back again. I'm going to make let's try something different. Let's go back over here. And that has nothing to do with it, but just fix my mistakes here. I'm going to go ahead and make a selection. Make sure that nothing is selected there. And now I'm going to go ahead and create the layer mask for that. And let's turn off the layer underneath. And it's still showing up white because that is JPEG. But if I go ahead and I save that, this should be, change this to GIF. Okay. So I'll say save for web. dot GIF. Okay. So for some reason, it's not showing the transparency in the background, and I don't know why. Again, I'm going to try again. I'm going to select all of this, and I'm going to select inverse. There's something I'm not thinking about. So let's select inverse. So everything else is selected, and let me go ahead and hit delete. Let's go ahead, go to image mode, RGB 8-bit, that should work. Well, we'll find out in a minute when I save these, but this should, let's do it this way. Okay, so let's do this. There's another way to save for the web, because by me saving these here, and let's do the third one. Let me go ahead and select Command J. And for the ping file, you can have partial opacity. So that would be PNG. That would be the main strength of it. So this layer, I could go ahead and I can turn down the opacity of this. Okay, you can't do that with the GIF. And when you're working with JPEGs, they can only be opaque, and they can only be rectangular. They cannot be irregularly shaped. So now I'm ready to save this. So what I want to do is I'll go ahead and I'll save my my Photoshop file first. And let's go ahead here. And let's go back in here. And I'm going to go ahead and say generate web or image assets. And they should already be created. So now what I can also do is I can go to File. I've created the JPEG, GIF, and PNG files. But then in addition to that now, if I wish to export them, we can export each one. Let's turn off this layer. Let's start with a PNG, and then we'll work our way backwards and go to the JPEG. So what I want to do now is I want to go to File, Export, and I'm going to say save for web legacy. And let's see what I get. Now, the default here was JPEG, but if I switch to PNG 24-bit, let's see what I get now. It's not working. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. All of this back here should be transparent. So there's clearly something that I'm goofing up here. And this is like surefire, easy peasy, and I'm just goofing something up, seriously. So let me go ahead and I'm going to get rid of these layers. And I'm going to start again. And to do this, I'm going to go ahead and how much time have I used? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause the recording for a minute. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to go ahead and take the file that I have here. And I'm going to duplicate it. Because what I did is I was using artboards, and artboards have solid colored backgrounds. And I don't want that. So let me go ahead and duplicate this. And I'm going to name it iPhoto Test Render for web. Okay. So there's my copy. I don't need all of these other layers anymore. So what I'll do is I'll take and just get rid of them all, just so it doesn't, I don't get confused. Because this is a copy. Okay. So what I can do is I'll come back here. And this one is going to be named, as I said, JPEG. So this is going to be save for web, JPEG, JPG. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a copy of this again, this layer. Come on. There we go. So we have a copy of it. And again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take and turn off the JPEG layer for a moment. And I'm going to go back up here and let's create a little circular one, because as I said, JPEGs can only be rectangular. But if I want a different shaped image, and if I want to make sure that I have transparency, I can do that. So let's go ahead and make there we go. That's what I was looking for. So now I have the background transparency. That's what I want. This has to be a GIF now. It could also be a PNG because, PNG 8-bit. So PNG, or no, GIF. I'm going to use this one as GIF, GIF. Okay. And then the next one that I'll do is I'll go ahead and make a copy of this again. So Command J. And this one, because I want it to be partial transparency or partial opacity, however you want to look at that. This has to be a 24-bit. It can't be an 8-bit. But this one now has to be a PNG file. So that would be PNG. Okay. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to save the whole, turn on all of these layers. Again, make sure that it's saved. And I'm going to save it a little bit differently. I'm going to go save as and save on my computer. Let's go back inside that folder. And I want it to be saved for web. PSD, that's the original file. And yes, I'm going to ask to, let me try that again. File, save as, because it doesn't question me about the name of it. So let's go back again. That's why. Save for web. I have save for web PSD.PSD. That's not needed. So I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file and replace the other. Yep, I want to replace it. And now what I can do is I can go ahead as I did before, and I want to make sure that under File, I come over here. Come on. And I go to Generate Image Assets. And it should automatically generate the JPEG, GIF, and PNG for me. In addition to that, what I can do is that I can go ahead and I can save each of these. If I turn on the right ones, let's go ahead and turn this one. If I want this one to be a JPEG, this is the current way of doing that. So if I go to File, Open, it just saves a lot of effort to do it this way, although I have kind of made it a little bit more complicated than it need be. So if you look under the Assets folder, you can see that it's already saved all 3 files. There's the GIF, there's the JPEG, which is rectangular, and there's the PNG. Okay, adds the transparency. That's the easiest way of doing it. We could say it's all done. Okay, then in addition to that, though, if you want to save each one individually as a JPEG, GIF, or PNG, Then you have to turn the layers on and off as needed. And if I want this one to be a JPEG, then I go ahead and I go to File, and I select Export. And I'm going to go ahead and use Save for Web Legacy. And the default, again, is JPEG. You want it to be very high. You want it to be maximum, high, medium, or low quality. You can start with very high. And if you look here in the 4UP version of this, you can look at 2UP or optimized or original. I like using the 4UP because it allows me to make comparisons. The original is in the upper left-hand corner. We can move this around like so, see what it's going to look like. And you can see that I have the JPEG here. That's 80 quality. The one down here is, 40 quality, which is considerably less. And this one is 20 quality. Now, if I don't see a difference between them, pick the lowest one, because it will tell me that with an old 56K modem, that the high quality will take 200 seconds to load. This one takes 52 seconds and the bottom one takes 30. But it's up to you. You need to, make that choice as to which, but it allows you to compare. Now, what I could do with this one is let's compare and see that if in this quadrant, if I were to switch from JPEG to GIF, what would that do to the time that it takes to download? And this one is even more. This is 350 seconds with a 56K modem. Let's see what this takes with a ping, 8-bit ping. So let's go ahead and switch from JPEG to 8-bit ping. And this will probably take as long, if not longer, than the GIF to load. There we go. So this takes, and it also gives us the file size. Now, this one is 1 megabyte. This one is 2, and this one is 1.5. So they're considered, they're fairly large files. Back in the day, that would be unheard of for a web, a web page, but given the size of it, if I wanted it as my splash page, that would not be unheard of. Okay, so I can check, which one of these quadrants that I want. Do I want it to be a JPEG, GIF, or PNG, and save it accordingly? So let's go ahead and save this one as a JPEG. And I don't need it to be very high quality. Let's just select high quality here, 80 quality. And then to show you, one, I'll go ahead and I'll save it. And it's asked me where to save it. And it should go to where I have already saved the file. So I don't want it in the assets folder because I already have that. But what I do is I want it to be in the folder for Save for Web Demo. You can do, wherever you want it. But I'm going to go ahead and save that like so. And it will save it in there. So now that I've already named it correctly, it will add the correct extension to it so that, and I won't have to worry about, is it going to upload in correctly? Will it publish correctly or not? But if you, try to take care of the naming of the file at the very end, you can goof up and make mistakes. But, like me, I'm already making mistakes here. So that's pretty much it. This would be one of the larger files. Now, if I wanted to make this a small file, then you have to go ahead and you have to crop it. So that would be using the crop tool. And this would be, if you want to make it small, you can come up here and instead of 1024 by 768, okay, we can go ahead and let's go ahead and make this, let's make it 640 by 480, or let's make it 400 by 400. Okay, there's 400 by 400 pixels. Okay, so if I want a square format, then I need to obviously, how am I going to crop this thing? Do I want this part of the image or do I want this part of the image? It's again, it depends on the circumstances that you're working with. Okay, so let's say I wanted it 400 pixels. Make sure that when you do this, that you don't get any of the white, the background area here. Make sure up here that we're at, now this says 92 pixels. I'm going to make it 72 pixels per inch. Okay. So I have my image cropped. And the next thing that you want to do, so that I can always bring this back to my original, is make sure where it says delete pixels, make sure that that is unchecked. And then I can go ahead and click. Now I have a little image that's, 400 by 400 pixels. And I can use that for the web as well. And I would have to resave it. Okay. So watch when I turn these guys back on. They don't do anything. Okay. Well, sort of. They work okay. But if I wanted to, I could go ahead and shrink it down and make it even smaller for the circular ones. Okay. So there you have it. It's important. Let me review really quickly that when you're working with images for the web, that you can only use, you save your original as a Photoshop file, but then the file formats that you can use for the web are only JPEG, GIF, or PNG. Typically, most photographs will be saved as JPEGs. If you want an irregular shape or you want transparency, a GIF file will do, also PNG. But if you want a partial transparency or partial opacity, then you have to use PNG. The resolution needs to be 72 pixels per inch. The way you name it, I prefer camel casing, but if you don't like that or you forget, you want a space between the words, then in order to do that, you have to put an underscore. Okay. So I can do that. You can leave capital letters in the middle of the name. They don't have to be that, but if you want to, if you have multiple words in the name of your file, just remember, don't start with a capital letter. Also, one final thing that I forgot to mention is never use any special characters. Don't use question marks, don't use exclamation marks, don't use dollar signs or anything like that. Nothing when you name your files for the web. And then you're set to go. Then when you're ready to save them, I think the easiest way to do that when you're in Photoshop is to save the original as a Photoshop file. And then in layers, make sure that each layer if you want to save it multiple ways, then each one is saved accordingly, and make sure that, and you'll see here, I did this incorrectly. Now I can rename these and it should fix this. See, I started with a capital letter. I'm talking and I'm not thinking here. And if I go back to save this, it should automatically update my files in the assets folder, which is really kind of nice. Let's go back again. So I'll go back again. So there's no capital letters. There we go at the beginning of the words. So let's try again. If I go to File, Open, or File, Save As. Let's go to try Save As. And let's see, let's save on my computer. Let's go in the Assets folder and see if it's automatically updated it, and it should have. So let's look. Yep, see, it automatically updated them all. So that's really kind of nice. Let's go back to the other one in case I goofed. Let's see this other one that I kind of messed up. Yeah, these were errors. These were mistakes that I made. So there you have it. You can, by changing these on the fly, they automatically update in your assets folder. So whatever revisions you make to the image will automatically be updated. They will not necessarily be updated automatically for your website. You'll have to import those, but that's all you need to do. That's how it works. So we're right up against the 11 o'clock hour, or the 3 o'clock hour. We're done for today. Again, we've been in this class, the Photoshop class, we've been working mostly for print. But if you do choose to save your images for the web, then this is what you need to do. I guess one of the things that I've learned today is that I would not use one of the standard web file formats because they use artboards, and artboards you cannot have transparency. So that doesn't work for us. I want to make sure that the images that I'm saving, if I do want transparency, that's really important that I make sure that I just use a regular old file and then turn off the background so that I have that transparency and I can create irregular shaped images and that sort of thing. Okay. So that's it for today. Unless you have any questions. Apologize again for the goof ups. And I think everything has worked out. So I'm going to say goodbye and I'm going to pause the recording and that will be it. Okay.